everybody, I'm back again with Angel. Aren't I, Angel?
Yes, you is.
Yeah, we're carrying on this talk. Angel's got a few more things that he wanted to say about pyramids and stuff like that. So we have to film it in a very strange way. We could do it on Hangout, but we're doing it this way. So in a minute, when we go to the screen, you'll just hear Angel talking, but you can hear me, can't you, Angel?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, it was a good chat the other day, and even just trying to explain things, you can't do it in 2 minutes, can you? And then 5 other things link into it. By the time you finished, you've spent an hour telling somebody something, and you've only talked about an itty weedy bit of it. But that's the way it goes, isn't it? I find it myself when I make my videos. I can't do it in 30 seconds.
Part of the problem that I come across is there's so much supporting evidence within the construction. I don't have to make up a piece or a part and explain what it did. The parts and pieces are there. I'm just explaining what they did. But they only did what they did if you follow the system. And I don't try to embellish anything about, future possibilities, other than maybe the product. Everything that I'm suggesting is physical natural science, things that if we weren't taught about critical race theory and how only black lives matter.
I mean, obviously, we've been friends for a while. I've kind of followed you probably since about 2007. I like the things you say. You're not following that norm differently, and I like that, Angel.
Well, like I said, when I approached this, I really didn't. I was tired of going down rabbit. I had viewed people's beliefs on what they thought the structure did, and when I looked deeper into their thought the structure did, compared physical pictures of the structure, I have been gobbling up for the past decade every picture and video I get. If somebody has a video and they're like, oh, it's just me walking through there, you got 10 of the same one. I'm like, I want to see an 11th, because sometimes your camera catches something that somebody else's camera didn't. And there have been things that people will ask me a question, what's this, or what does this mean? I'm like, I never saw that. Even though I've got 3 or 4 GoPros or video cameras, I got a couple of people that did it on 8mm and even, the old bulky ones. But they're all pointing, don't have any 360 cameras yet of the structure. And there are pieces and parts that visually, for it with the intention of watching for potential water levels and roughness where it shows signs of a reaction occurring, things of that nature. The evidence is all there. It has to be. There's so much evidence that they have cleaned up and polished when they've closed it for reconstruction. And if I just so that I got an email, I think they're cleaning things up again, ironically enough, this week. They closed it for a week or 2 for cleaning and construction, which scares me to what it's going to be like when they reopen it, because they love to patch things that shouldn't be patched, and they love to repair things that shouldn't be repaired, because they're trying to mold it into a tomb and not the physical construction that it is, which is, just, it's heartbreaking to me when I saw that.
Do you know what's really weird? Do you know what? We have this place down the road from us called Highclere. Have you ever heard of it?
Highclere, no, not that one.
It's called Highclere Castle, but it's not like Buckingham Palace. I don't know, it's a bit more of a sort of square building. But anyway, I suppose it is a bit like I don't know. But anyway, they used to originally have the governments there and everything. Anyway, in the wartime, I can't remember which one she is now. I'm sorry, I'm not very good with names. But she is what's one of the big cut families, that's it, a Rothschild. She's a Rothschild, and she got her dad, even though she was illegitimate, he gave her quite a lot of money, and then she married someone English, and they lived in Highclere Castle, and her husband is the one that was supposed to have found King, the pyramids.
King Tut, or Khufu.
Yeah, is it Tut? That one.
Well, Tut, to my knowledge.
But one thing I was going to say was they link him with that, but they don't actually show him with any of the mummies. So he's the one that's supposed to have found them. So you know which one I'm talking about. But there's no pictures of him with the coffins. So how could that be?
Well, you got to look at the terminology. If I employed someone to go and do something, and then they did what I employed them to do, I could stand up and say, I did this. I don't have to be the one physically doing the work if it was my money that threw it. Like, I really don't think Bill Gates ever goes into a lab and touches the beaker. In fact, I'm pretty sure he stays clear of level 5 biological centers because he knows the danger of what's inside of them. But then again, he's happy to sit there and say all the things that he has done. Do you see?
So I just thought, when you're linking this into the tomb, and he was supposed to have found some of the mummies that were there, you don't actually see him next to a mummy, even though he's the one that's supposed to have found them. So I think wouldn't you categorise it? Wouldn't you show he'd be standing there next to one of the coffins?
Right.
So we know that story's not true and has been put in. He can't defend himself now, can he? He's dead.
I don't want to defend this person. However, from a mindset of someone of wealth, and I've had the luxury of breaking bread with a few people of wealth, that when they say something occurred, like their business did something, they didn't physically do the work. They just ran the company. But they will be happy to take claim for what their company did or their money did. So that could be potentially what he said when he found them, or they was found under his dollar. However, regardless of that, my thing is, I don't think King Tut. I agree with pharaohs, and I agree with tombs, and I agree with the staved seed. I knew that they were smart enough to have honey, real honey, not the chemical stuff with high fructose corn syrup and gelatinous goo and food coloring that you get at Costco. But or at your local big box store, they had real stuff. They had real knowledge. They had the knowledge of electroplating. There's so much stuff that they knew. And you don't see Twinkies in the pyramids. You don't see ho-hos, and you don't see plastic fruit, and you don't see any of that stuff because they were knowledgeable of how to eat and live and thrive. I'm not going to go the awe of what the knowledge of the time is a completely separate thing that I would love to share with people. I'm not an expert on it. There are better people that are experts.
Should we go to you on the screen then, Angel? It was just to show that we are together, we are talking, but once I once I start recording, you won't hear me. Not on the computer.
The way you're speaking to me now, this device doesn't have a camera. I intentionally disabled it.
That's all right. But don't worry, because I like you flipping around and looking at things.
But this one I'm better at screen sharing because it's my computer. But I go more than put a Band-Aid over my camera on my laptop. I disable the camera. Just because I don't even want it getting light senses of when I'm turning on and off camera lights. I disable it. I am that knowledgeable of what it can and is being done with our electronics.
Well, let's go over to the other one, and then you can put your camera on, and then you can show whatever you want.
That's fine. Go
Okay,
ahead.
we're going to go over now. We're switching.
Well, Karen, one thing that you were asking is, I do appreciate the pharaohs and the tombs and the technology they had and all that stuff. However, I do not really honestly feel the Egyptians had anything to do with these structures. The couple of the issues are that I was told, again, like I said, I went down many rabbit trails. We were told in school that these were tombs. Then with further prying in the past couple of decades, they're now saying they were effigies or memorials for the pharaohs and stuff, because all the pharaohs and stuff, King Tut's tomb, all that, none of them were found anywhere near pyramids. They were found in the Valley of the Kings, where they had a bunch of tombs of a lot of people. One thing I had said the other day is I had spoke with a gentleman who was an expert on all the pharaohs, could tell you who slept with whose brother and all the nitty gritties. He went to college for this stuff. A theological, well, it may be real, just like, you had said it may not be real. It may be real. No, now it's hard for people to understand what you're saying because these questions are. Um, I do not feel. Well, no, no burials. There has never been anyone found, any bodies other than somebody who may have crawled in there in like the 1700s and died or something like that. No bodies have been found. No tombs. No things of importance. Anything of that nature have ever been found. This is part of what I say, Karen, is these are all stories. These are all stories. And you're asking questions based off the stories. They're called tombs because they've told you they're tombs, and that you were trained in school that they were tombs, just like you were trained in school that we live on a globe. That doesn't make it the truth. And everyone who looks at it, they're looking at it with the vision. They're by default, their vision is these are tombs. So you're always asking why this, why that, mentally seeing a tomb. But I don't think, no, I don't think, I know that if you do any research, you will find that they never found any ornamentation, any inscribing, even those walls where they have the really cool pictures and stuff that are all great and wonderful. Those were found in tombs that were in the Valley of the Tombs and other areas, not within any of the structures, any of them. The ones in Bosnia, the ones in Peru, the ones in Mexico, any of the things that we label a pyramid, none of them have been in any way found to have tombage type stuff. No mummified bodies, no burial chambers, nothing. They love to give you that perception in the stories. And again, that's why some of my videos I label pulling your head out of the sand, because you're everyone starts, including what you're thinking. You're coming and saying, why do they call them tombs? They call them tombs because they want to call them tombs, because 500 years ago they did find tombs. They knew tombs existed, and they just assumed that these were tombs. They assumed that these were mausoleums or memorials for things. And that story has perpetuated through the centuries. But I do not believe those stories hold any water. None of them. When you do any research, and I challenge anyone to find me a pyramid that has mummified bodies or in any way is a burial tomb, has riches in it. No, they broke into a bunch of them looking for this stuff, but they always failed. Just like, Michelson Morley's failure. They failed. They didn't fail. What they did is showed that these were not tombs, but they saw it as a failure because they went into it with the mindset that they were tombs. And that's part of my hurdle, is when I'm speaking with people, they mentally keep backstepping to the tombs. They ask me, well, what about these wonderful golden pyramid tops? I'm like, that's stories. Those are stories fabricated. There's no scratches of some gold on the top of it that gives them this idea. This is a mental picture they did, or these ornate surroundings, casing stones of all this stuff smooth and polished to these are all fabricated stories that I have to they're a hurdle to get out of people's minds, to see this as the wonderful thing that it is, because they have the mental view block of assuming they were tombs. Just like when you look at Tower 1 and 2, they have the mental view block of this thing pancaking on top of itself and squishing out with bursts of air the whole way down. And that's just, it's a mental view block that people see because that's what they were told, and that's what they envision every time they see it. Now, if I told you about one of my friends. I did tell you, you may not remember. I took one of my friends, he knew nothing about Building 7, nothing. And we sat down one day over I think it was a bong, and we watched demolitions of all sorts of buildings. And I kept throwing Building 7 in there every now and then. the one. We watched the one where the building rolls over. We watched the ones where towers fall and smokestacks fall and corn husk things don't go right. And we were watching it for like, I was doing this intentionally. And I threw in building 7 and I said, hey, do you know that building? He's like, no. But at no point did he say anything, but he could tell that it was a building being blown up. I'm like, yeah, that was a building we blew up on September 11th, 2001. He's like, well, what do you mean we blew up a building? And then I started telling him with the mindset that he already knew it was a demolition. I sat down and told him the backstory, and he's like, no way. And then he came back to me like a week or two later, like, oh, there were raging fires in the building. I'm like, no, that's what the story says, that there were raging fires in the building. And that's what brought it down. I'm like, you show me pictures, any pictures of raging fires. And of course, you pull up the news feeds of, the 7th floor with a couple of office fires and the 20-something floor with a couple of office fires. And then all of a sudden you see the thing fall. But in his mind, he wanted to see raging fires. He wanted to see raging fires, so that's what he saw. But 2 weeks before that, he was like, oh my God, why did they do this? As soon as he got something that comforted his mind, put him back into his normacy bias, his my private Idaho. As soon as that occurred, then he accepted with open arms the story he was told, and mentally that's what he saw from ever then. And at that point, anytime he came to my house, I told him, I do not want you cooking anything on my stove, because I don't want that frying pan exploding. Metal explodes when it gets hot. He's like, it does not. I'm like, well, it did in building 7. And he could never, there was an area of tension up until his passing. Yes, it is one story after another. But that's part of the hurdle is when I'm speaking to people, they fall back on it. They ask the same thing. Why do they call them tombs? We're told they're tombs. I'm like, you're told something that a story started several hundred years ago, before the general population had the knowledge to deconstruct these things. And I'm not sure people at the Rand Corporation or something like that ever cared to sit down and deconstruct it. People who were intelligent enough. And I told you the story about when I went to UCLA and I sat down with a couple of people that were supposed to be brainiacs. This was, I was about a decade ago when I first started. And these were people in their young 20s, maybe low 30s, college kids. So I guess maybe they were in their very young 20s. Do I still have you? I got another phone call. I'm gonna have to mute myself. So I like to try to use a different device to do the call on. But regardless, they were soon as they realized that I was talking about the Giza pyramid, I didn't even get onto the rest of the complex because at the time I was oblivious to it. I was focusing on that one structure. I didn't realize how all three, the Osiris's shaft, all of them, the whole complex works as a system. I didn't realize that, but even if I had, as soon as I started showing them that the pyramid system, so as soon as somebody recognized it as the pyramid, all of a sudden the story changed to like, oh, and the star alignment, oh, and this was for the souls to exit. These physicists sit there and started talking about souls and stuff. Went right into the tomb dogma stories, and I actually eventually just got up and left. I didn't say goodbye or anything. They just started talking, and I just left. I don't even know if they realized I left. But it was a fruitless endeavor. I was hoping to get somebody that would tell me, well, in this particular model, if your model was correct, and this was happening, these gases would come at play, and you get some condensation over here, and you get some this over there, and you get some that, and the temperatures would have to get to this in order for this to occur, and the pressures would have to get to that. And these are the people I want to talk to, where they can actually see it as a system. Let's say I'm using a boiler. just a steam engine, a locomotive steam engine. I come up with a new idea. I'm sitting here with a bunch of brainiacs, come up with a new idea for a steam engine. I want somebody to say, well, your boiler has to be a little bit bigger because the water needs room to expand, and this has to be that, and well, you have to have a relief valve over here, and this and that. And then I can say, well, isn't that what this particular pipe right here might be, or isn't that what this might be? And to see it as a system. And I can't get people to take their mind out of the sand and view the structure as a system, as opposed to a tomb. Right, but they can't hear you. I understand this, but just 5 minutes ago, you said, well, why do they call it a tomb?
Actually, at this point, I just wanted to add, because I'm going video, but IVF told us that it is a tomb. Not that I think it's a tomb. I don't anymore. Like we did originally, we were all told it was a tomb. But I'm just saying, why did they call it a tomb then, as it's got nothing to do with tombs?
Well, because, again, I don't think someone 500 years ago, 400 years ago, 300 years ago had the general knowledge to understand what it was. We didn't know what heavy water was. Faraday wasn't playing with his rods yet. I do think that the Templars had the knowledge of static electricity and probably knew how to electroplate things and knew how to manipulate forms of energy. And that was a trade secret, because otherwise somebody could just be taking, pieces of steel and electroplating them with a little gold on there, and poof, you had counterfeiting. Easily done, and the average person would have no idea how to verify that. No idea. In fact, I'm not so uncertain that the Templars weren't doing that themselves, because people would have no idea unless they sliced the coin open to realize that it was a sandwiched coin. Well, it wouldn't be sandwiched, it would be electroplated, so it would be on all edges. But I think that knowledge was known, and I think there's a lot of evidence that the knowledge was known. You look at older, I'm going to refer to as Masonic buildings, the ones with gargoyles and stuff around the edge of them. They normally had copper roofs and things of that nature, which make no sense except for if you were using it to collect the ambient static electricity. I also think that a lot of church steeples were designed in that exact same fashion, and I'm not so unsure that the higher end clergy, you got up to the cardinals and deacons and stuff like that, and your bishops, that they didn't have the knowledge of electroplating, and when they blessed the water, I'm not so uncertain that it actually wasn't colloidal silver water, which would be perfectly I well, look at some of the first telescopes, the ones Galileo used. They were in churches. Churches had the money to build a telescope, and all your telescopes, most of your telescopes today, are church. Lucifer is a church telescope. It's the telescope that's owned by the Vatican. The Vatican has their own telescopes. Why? I think astrology is very good because they know, they in their hearts, this is what I'm getting at, the people on the higher end, once you've kissed the right feet and palms or whatever you got to do in the church world, you eventually are let in on the secrets, just like the Masons are eventually let in on the secrets. Even Scientology, eventually, as you get up there, you're let in on the secrets. And I think it makes no sense why they didn't have colloidal silver as the holy water. You put your finger in it, you touch it to your head. That's all you really need to do. If once a week you just rub a little bit of colloidal silver on you, that really is going to help keep infections away. They splash it on you a little bit. They don't have to try to sit there and explain to you what infused silver in water is and how its benefits. They just make you touch it. They make you do it as a routine, and they don't even have to tell you why or what's going on. And I think about 200 years ago, they said, you know what? Health care, or at the time it was medical care, can be a very lucrative thing. If we can get these people to, instead of staying healthy, we can get them to be sick, we can treat their illnesses. And there's a lot of money in that. And I think that change happened in the early 1900s, started in the late 1800s, but started definitely in the early 1900s, when the doctors were started to be trained on how to follow the prescribed medical system and stay away from the quack Scientology of using nature and medical herbs. In fact, most of your pharmaceuticals were derived after chasing a natural found something, a natural found ooze from a plant, or aspirin root. Hey, we don't want to go and keep digging up these trees and grinding up the roots. We want to be able to do this. We want to find the active chemical, focus on the active chemical, synthesize that active chemical in a laboratory, and then we can have a product. We don't have to worry about weather. We don't have to worry about care. We don't have to worry about moving it. We just pump it out of a chemical factory, and the world is happy, and we're rich. And this is my dog. So these are all completely different rabbit trails, and honestly, I could spend hours talking to you on each of them, but because some of them I'm not all knowledgeable, I really don't want to try to. Which side of the what? Oh, this is something. If you ever are going to go for a tour, these guys, Puka Productions, they have Puka Tours. They're going to give you a tour just as good as I would think Graham Hancock, Bren Forrester, any of those people I consider to be at least people who grease the right wheels to get you into the right places. But this picture right here in this video, which I can pull up the video too, is of the thieves passage, not the thieves entrance, but the thieves passage, which is right after you come up the top of the grand gallery. You duck under before you come into what they like to call the antechamber. There is a hallway that goes off to the side, and when you look down that hallway, you see it goes back, goes to the side. You can even see there's about a little 4-6 inch rim there where it jogs over and then goes down. And then when you go down that hallway is where I showed you the picture. I did not mean to close that. That was unintentional, but I'll have it back up in a second. Is where you have the, again, you can always get to this at photos.giza.ws. I don't try to hide any of my pictures. People are welcome to go and look at them for yourself, zoom in on them, critique them, ask me questions. As long as they're not backed with why would a king do this, or why would because I don't believe. So I need to get to them. You won't have access to these things over here on the side, but I do because it's my account. But you can still get to most of these. And one of it is, here it is. This right here. This quadrant right here, you don't see what I see yet. That computer's behind it. Give me a second. Here it comes. There you go. This top quadrant right here, I'm wiggling my mouse, is down that particular hallway. So you go in, it looks about 6 feet, and I'm gonna almost guarantee that it's gonna marry the hole that comes out of the north side of the King's Chamber, is probably the end of that, and then that thing turns and goes up where it marries up at the same elevation and peak as the top corner of the Grand Gallery, and that other chute goes down like about 10-15 feet. You can see there that gentleman, as I said, when I spoke to him 2 years ago, I spent 2 hours on the phone with this guy, and at the time he was open to talking. Since then, he's taken down his website. He's joined up with the Pharaoh's Pump guy and Edward Nightingale, he's a surveyor. He went to Giza and he surveyed Giza. He got permission somehow to explore the plateau, grease the right wheels. It was while Hawassi guy was still there. And he surveyed the plateau. However, when he made his book, which he really does point out a lot of correlations and how it is an amazingly squared out, you know, just like you took a blueprint and dropped it on a piece of paper. It is very well done, but he only releases his dimensions on a 2D plane. And my goal is to actually expand that to a 3D plane, because when you have a pool of water here and a pool of water here, if this one's 1 inch lower, then the water is going to be moving towards that pool to marry it out. And the conduits within the plateau, like I think I mentioned to you, anything that you see a circle seems to be pressure. Anything that is squared or rectangular seems to be volume. And that is a pretty good consistency along the entire, not only this structure, but many of the monolithic structures that fit into, as I've mentioned, I don't think they all hold water. I just, some of there's a guy, Carl Monk, wrote a book called The Code. He has several movies on it. He has 2 or 3 books. I have them in PDF. They may be on my website. If not, I can add them to my website. They are public domain at this time. I think the guy's still alive. I think he lived in Alaska or something like that. He realized, I'm not going to say discovered, because he realized that many of the monolithic structures are designed to be read from altitude, like the Nazca line. They whoever it was going to be at altitude, like 1,000 feet, in a hot air balloon, in a dirigible, in an airplane, in a flying saucer, I don't care. It was designed to be read from altitude, that you could dissect and read the structures as a waypoint, and they would give you a mathematical answer, and that mathematical answer correlated to their longitude and latitude upon the surface of the plane, with the Great Giza Pyramid being the 0 or prime meridian within that structure. So you take whatever the number is and you skew it 31 degrees, 31.13 degrees, and you get your answer, and that answer is the structure. And a lot of people who try to naysay it will come up with like, well, if we take a 1 foot cube and blah, blah, it's always going to be the right answer. Yeah, if you use a number like 1, it's always going to be the right answer, because 1, 2, 0, they're magic numbers when you're doing math. But when you take a number like 1,500, by 7,200, that you're not going to get always a consistent answer. It's going to always be different. And the people, the civilization at the time that these were constructed, had a common, like I said, Braille, Morse code, anything Roman. If they're consistent, it's a language, and they're consistent. Well, their language, a form of their language was math. And I think somebody somewhere said, oh, we're going to build a building here. And they're not always buildings. Some of these pyramids were never designed to be lived in. They're not very utilitarian as far as function. But they are, if you visualize them, as a waypoint. If you're in a hot air balloon and you see this down there, you say, oh, there's, I'm going to say Stonehenge because everyone knows it, even though I do believe it was either reconstructed or constructed 70-ish years ago. Still, you look down, you see, you see Stonehenge, and you can mathematically read it. And Stonehenge, which is kind of what scares me a little, is the Druids invested in the recreation of Stonehenge in the 1950s. But it fits into the code, including using the prime meridian as 0. If you use what we have as the prime meridian today, it doesn't work. The math doesn't work. If it's anywhere else upon the plane, it doesn't work. So I think the Druids knew of this information. They probably in Druid college, you know, the philosophers of Druidness probably know, hey, you know, we've had this little secret. You know, we're not the only ones that have been on the surface of this plane. We're not the only ones that have lived here. There's a lot of stuff in this book that seems fanciful, but you know, it did and had existed at one point. You know, maybe there was a massive flood, massive fire, a volcano blew up, and all the food crops died, and hence the population died out, and they're recreating the civilization. I don't know what occurred. That historians can try to guess at that. Yeah, I don't even think that they're guessing, but it is not out of the realm of possibility that some large volcano went off and gave us 3 or 4 months of darkness, and then the crops wouldn't grow, and then that all spiraled downhill, kind of like how this pandemic has spiraled our crops and stuff downhill. There are companies that can't get pieces of stuff that they need, so their whole business kind of comes to a crunch. Was it BASF, whatever it is, the people who make hundreds of chemicals, thousands, they make thousands of chemicals that go into many different things like oils, and you know, people who make paint in Canada can't get these chemicals anymore because that plant shut down because they blew up the pipeline that fed the gas to make the particular thing run. It's a whole spiral of how one cog in the wheel of our everything comes now world. One cog in the wheel makes so many other things come to a screeching halt. Without the gas, the natural gas we have today, you know, we can't fertilize our crops, and hence our yields for the next half a decade plus are going to be sacrificed. We're going to have less food. Food prices are going to go up. Things are going to get crazy. But what I was getting at is that there was a civilization. There was a civilization, a great civilization. Graham Hancock says that we are a world in amnesia, or a civilization in amnesia. I don't disbelieve that. Some of these people are very accurate in what they're saying. Another one is that that big guy with the beard. His name is eluding me right now, but he really shows evidence, not just theories of, evidence of how there was a great mass of flood ice. You can see coming down from Canada into the U.S. and he really says this is what occurred, and you know, you're able to visually go there and see it. And when you look at it, you zoom out on a macro scale, you can see how a massive flood went through there to eat away at it. One person who I don't agree with 100% would be somebody like that Dr. Dino, the one that got into the flat Earth argument, even though in the Bible it says it's flat, but he can't wrap that around it, even though I'm thinking of his name right now and it's eluding me. David Hovind. I don't know if you've looked into him, but he has a mini series where he really documents things like, this animal they say was extinct. Here's a picture of me swimming with it down in Australia. You know, how the history books lie to you. He takes things current day, happened in our own lifetime, Mount St. Helens, and you can see fields before Mount St. Helens erupted, and you see fields after Mount St. Helens erupted, and you can see, because of the way that Mount St. Helens erupted and how it was very abrupt and the trees flowed down, and there was mud flows and stuff like that. When things settled 5 years later and they started digging into the mountainside, it looks just like the walls of the Grand Canyon and such. So if that occurred, Mount St. Helens was like 25 years ago or whatever it was, and they dug into it 10 years later and they said, oh my goodness, it looks just like the Grand Canyon, and that occurred over a 10-year period, then it is completely feasible that the Grand Canyon wasn't carved over millions of years, but happened because of a great flood. And he feels, and I agree with his findings, that there was at one point a Great Lake that burst that caused the Grand Canyon. And that happened sometime, could have been millions of years ago, but it was a great flood. It didn't carve down. In fact, the part of the evidence that can easily show is where the Colorado River enters into the canyon is at a lower elevation than the top rim of the canyon. The water wouldn't have gone up to go over it unless there was a pool there that it broke through to carve the canyon down. These are just, when you look at it, when you look at the facts, it just is logical and makes sense. Now, he also believes that, well, I don't believe dinosaurs existed either, but he doesn't believe dinosaurs existed. I think that's a fabrication. I think there are a lot of fabrications. What he's trying to get everyone to think is that the world was created in 6 days, as the Bible said, and that the earth, and I believe our current era is about 6,000 years old, where he won't accept, even though it's in the Bible, that we may be on a flat plane with the waters above and the waters below. He can't go that far, but he's able to really document how a lot of things are a lie. And then you got people like Lloyd Pye. Lloyd Pye was a great guy. He died half a decade ago, I think, in I don't know, may even been longer, but he died not that long ago. And he was one of the people who had the crystal skulls, and I think he hung out with people like Bren Forrester and such like that. They kind of ran in that same circle. But what he pointed out is how fictitious the theory of evolution is, how there's so much things in Darwin's book that we know today because of x-rays. We know today because we've dissected animals. Think Darwin didn't invest that much time. When he was given the grant, he didn't go out and write the book on his own. He didn't wake up one day and said, I want to explain how. No, he was given money and he was sent on this task to find evidence and write this book. He was chartered to write the book. And you can look that up. I'm not even making it up. He was paid to write the book. Somebody said, go write a book based on this. Just like, Al Gore told somebody, go write me a book telling the world how they're all going to be underwater in half a decade, and how polar bears can't swim. Go write that book for me. Or make that movie for me. There's so much that is untrue, and our kids are being taught untrueness even when they know it's untrue. They can't hear you, I know, but let me ask you, have you seen this relatively new song called 2 + 2 = 5 by a rapper named High Res? In the video, which I'm not going to play it because I don't want you to get any copy strikes, but in the video, it's basically teaching, saying, we're going to teach your kids they can be anything they want. Why give them general knowledge? We're going to give them facts that, they don't need to know, like, Black Rights Matter, and, well, not that Black rights don't matter. Black Lives Matter is one of the things he's pointing out, and that just the way our kids today aren't taught anything. They are trained how to be wimpy. I don't know, wimpy and entitled, I guess would be a good word. Wimpy and entitled. And they don't know how to do anything for themselves. I've seen it in the workforce. It is scary, and the general population is just sucking it down like, oh yeah, let's buy a Ukrainian flag to, support this wonderful cause, and so much other stuff. It's just, God, I could go on. I was going to Lloyd Pye. People like that have if you sit down and just watch one of his shows, you can't talk to him anymore. He's passed away, but just watch one of his things on YouTube before they take him down. And if you sit there and just look at it, it makes the theory of evolution completely doesn't hold water. To this day, they've had this theory for what, 100 years now? They have never found any missing links between anything. You don't have a cat dog. Well, you do now because we genetically engineer them. We take cat DNA, we take dog DNA, and we squish it together. We take cat DNA and squish it together with jellyfish DNA. We squish plant tree DNA with jellyfish DNA, so you have glowing trees. I mean, none of this stuff is going to happen in nature. You're not going to get a jellyfish humping a sycamore tree. It's not going to happen. But we're doing it. We're creating these abominations of nature, these poor cats that, while they glow in the dark because they have jellyfish stuff in them, they're constantly being stung by jellyfish stuff, so they're constantly in a state of pain. But they're cute. Ma, look how cute it is. My cat glows in the dark. It's frustrating. Anyway, this particular conduit down this particular hallway is something that, there's the picture. It exists. I'm not making it up. You might be able to grease the wheels to get into there, but it's a room that they don't talk about, they don't discuss. It's not on the tour because it doesn't fit the tomb dogma. And that goes back to, they really, especially the antiquities, the Giza antiquities, their whole goal is tourism, and their focus is this was a tomb, and they're going to do everything they can to say it was a tomb, and they're not going to let you see or potentially even hear things that negate it being a tomb. Come on. I love you and stuff, but I'm on the phone. It's like having a kid. Come here. Can you? He won't let me pick him up. He runs away when I go to pick him up. He wants to go out and play. It's killing me. Go ahead and ask the question. Send me a different direction. Well, like I said, I've gone down a lot of rabbit holes, and I start each rabbit hole with an open mind, and some of them hold water. Lloyd Pye, his findings hold water. Dr. Dino, Kent Forrester, he went to Ken Hovind. Ken Hovind actually went to jail. Stupidly, they didn't like his message so much they sent him to jail for, I think it was like 9 years or something ridiculous. And they said he was they got him on stupid bank reasons. And
I'm sorry, can I interrupt you for 1 second?
It's not like I'm on the phone with somebody across the pond and we're recording for a live transmission.
Where's the really big ladder, Drew? I'm paying George to watch the camper. It's after. Okay, good. Sorry.
Hi. What was I thinking? Oh yeah, they said structuring. That's what they made up a term like 2 decades ago called structuring, and they did it to try to catch drug dealers, and they used it against this guy. And it's another tangent. You know Tommy Chong? You know Cheech and Chong? You know that guy? All right. There's a guy, Tommy Chong. He made a movie. Great movie, honestly. He was it was about getting stoned, hanging out, just a day of a stoner type thing. He made a couple of movies. Up in Smoke, something Dreams, Pleasant Dreams or something like that. He's got a couple of them. And he was very an icon in the I want to get stoned world. His son started a business where they were selling drug paraphernalia. And his father said, you can put my name on your bongs. The father didn't do any marketing, didn't do anything except for allow his son to put his name on the bongs. And, nobody else could have a Tommy Chong bong because nobody else had the rights to put that name on it. Just like if somebody wanted, they would get a Bob Marley. What I was talking about, this poor guy, Tommy Chong, an actor, let his son use his name to put on a piece of paraphernalia that this way nobody else could have. If you want to buy a Bob Marley tie or something, or a Bob Marley t-shirt, royalties go to Bob Marley. In this case, no one else could get those royalties because he's the only one who had the permission. They did everything they could and eventually sent this poor guy to jail for like half a decade. And he took the charges because it's like either I take the charges or you're going to go after my son who actually owned the company, worked in the company, and I'll take the time in lieu of my son, even though they're completely fabricated charges. It's our if they don't like what you're saying, and I think they're afraid of marijuana, THC, pot, because of its natural medicinal qualities. In our own heads, we have cannabinoid receptors. God put it there. What is it there to collect? Cannabinoid. Well, doesn't that tell you that cannabis in some way is one of the things like water that our bodies might need to actually work? They might use the fibers in this, the same fibers that we used to use to weave ropes and sails, and we actually used it for paper. And if it wasn't for the fact that Hearst, one of the guys in our country that had newspapers, and he was the one who quoted, "You give me the pictures, I'll give you a war." Totally another offshoot, but he wanted his paper industry to make money. Therefore, he lobbied to make the cannabis paper illegal, and it worked out really well because they put in our country, put cannabis right up there on the one of the most dangerous substances list, even though it's great for so many medicinal reasons. It's great for so many therapeutic reasons. And it's very great for recreational reasons. But they said it was dangerous. No one, to my knowledge, except for some lady in England half a decade ago, died from overdosing on marijuana. And supposedly the lady who did it in England, while it was in the newspaper, no one knows who it was nobody's neighbor. It just sounded good. But other than that, and some rats. They put rats in a fish tank and they filled it up with so much pot smoke, the poor rats were suffocated. Hence, they died from marijuana inhalation. They were told, you need to kill these rats somehow with marijuana. And that's what they did. They suffocated those little buggers to death, but at least they probably died happy. But they had to do it so say, see, it can kill. And that was, anyway, where was I going? They put this poor Kent Hovind guy into jail for structuring money that he didn't even do, because while he was the spokesperson for the church, he wasn't the financial person. He didn't, to my knowledge, take the checks and actually work with it. And when you are getting $100, $500, $700 donations, you put it into the bank. That's not structuring. You don't pool all your money till you get $10,000 and drop it into the bank. Your grocery store or whatever might drop a few thousand every day into the bank because the money's coming in. But in his situation, he wasn't structuring anything. Somebody gave him a $200 check. He put the $200 check in the bank. But none of the deposits were over $10,000 individually. Therefore, they said, oh, you were structuring. You weren't reporting it properly. No, somebody gives me a check, I put it in the bank. End of story. So anybody who they don't like their message, they find a way to put you, to find a way to shut you up. They will find a way. And it's quite horrible, that little fact that goes on. But Lloyd Pye passed away. Ken Hovind's still alive, but I think he actually had a discussion with Jaron, if I remember correctly. He was discussion with somebody, him or the one that lived in Seattle that the redheaded girl went to visit. I forget their names right now. Well, you would know. The one of the big ones. Either way. But Patricia Steer went to visit some guy over in Washington or something like that, and who was another big guy in the picture, but he's not so big anymore. I think. Yes, him. I don't know why I mentioned that, but I forget why I had even brought him up. But if they don't like what they're saying, they find a way to shut you up. That's what it is. It's just they will do their damnedest to shut you up when you start getting in the right area. You know when you're over the target, when the flak is. I do, like I said, I have hurdles. Like the one that that we already discussed, where I will be talking to somebody and they will ask a question with the mindset of the stories they've already been told. They will ask, well, what about the casing stones? Well, but that's a tomb that's in the king's chamber. Number one, we call it the king's chamber. That bothers me. I like to call it the combustion chamber, because I feel that's where combustion was taking place. They were burning the two fuels together, air and water primarily. And the air and hydrogen, and the compound that comes out of that is water. And that there's nothing hocus pocus about that. That is pure science. We use HHO torches today, and they're very efficient at cutting through metals, and they're very efficient at doing other stuff, and you practically can't burn yourself with it. It's a weird chemical reaction. Anytime you burn things together, it's technically a chemical reaction that or oxidizing hydrogen, whatever you want to, it's all the same thing, different word. That it will cut through metal, but it won't cut through your skin. And it's a safe gas. You can't say that with propane or acetylene or anything of that nature. That stuff you can burn yourself all day long. Now you can burn yourself by touching the metal after you've cut it, but you can put your hand in the flame and it will not burn you. Have you seen that? Yeah. So I'm not going to bother to show it again, but it's the reaction, the chemical reaction, the burning, the oxidation of the hydrogen is a very unique reaction. And I think there's more to it than we even consider. Oh, and it's a energy positive reaction. Not only is there heat created, but there's 2 electron microvolts of energy for every combining of the water, which will, if you have a flame going constantly in a bubble of rock where there's nowhere for this buildup of static electricity, this energy to go, it's actually not static electricity. It's a different type of energy, but you still just picture a buildup of energy in the combustion chamber. It has to release. Nature wants it to be released. And I believe the system was designed to focus that release the direction they wanted it to go. That's, if nothing else, it's a really cool waterfall. I think there's a whole lot more to it, but if nothing else, it's a really cool demonstration of how they could manipulate water. The World Trade Fairs, I'm not. Oh, the World's Fair. They every 10 years or something, they have a World's Fair where they all get together. And well, I think those World's Fairs are a current day construct, kind of like the Olympic Games. Well, that would be like a retaining pond or such, and they do that because it looks pretty, like the ones in front of the in the U.S. or in our capital, we have very large retaining pools. In fact, if you watch Forrest Gump, Jenny jumps in one and runs across it. They're only like knee high, knee to waist high, depending on how tall you are. They're not very deep, but they look pretty. And that's people who have ponds in their backyard, they're not very deep, but they look pretty. I think that's a aesthetics type thing. I don't think there's any functionality behind it. The only World's Fair that I would really like to have been at is the one with Tesla, where he was demonstrating how his mastery of electricity. You don't think he's real? Now that's something I want to inquire. Well, I never met him. I have seen evidence of his labs and such. But again, they have stories. And I also understand the fight between the AC and DC power. Edison at the time was a very prominent businessman, and his focus was DC power, so therefore he did everything he could, in my understanding of the story, to promote DC power, including electrocuting poor elephants with AC power. You could electrocute animals with either power, but ironically enough, today, current day, if you're going to find somebody electrocuted, they don't electrocute them with AC power. They electrocute them with DC power because it's much more efficient at killing the body than AC power. One is like shaking somebody, and the other one is cooking them. DC power is what we use today. When you're electrocuted, they run DC power through you because it's much more efficient at making sure you're dead. So when their whole, it's ironic that Edison's gimmicks, in the long run, it's DC power, which is the more dangerous of them. Now, not if you're playing with a battery or something, but when you're working with bigger things, you go slightly above a car battery, and even car batteries. I think a car battery can kill you. I really think if you did it long enough, a car battery would kill you. But DC power is not as good at being transmitted, and these things are. At the time when Edison was playing, he was playing with a city, and maybe he was growing from there. But he started with city, and he had DC power plants. You can go to New York. Well, again, that goes back to where I feel it depends on what you look at with electricity. That the buildings, you look at old buildings that have copper roofs. Normally, they'll have gargoyles around the outside of them too, but that's just decorative. But they had copper roofs, and if you look at that, there was usually a conduit that went down towards ground, towards earth. I do believe that they were utilizing the fact that there's ambient energy in the air, and ground is ground. And if you were to take a kite, in fact, I'd be glad to show you videos of where somebody, nowadays you can do it with a drone. Very simply, you take a drone and you put like a 30 gauge wire on it, and you just fly that drone up at like 100 feet or so. You could take that wire and just touch it to a copper or to a copper spike in the ground, and you'll get a spark every now and then. Not a lot. You're not going to be electrocuting somebody, but it's enough to show that there's energy there. And that amount of energy is going to be equivalent to the amount of energy that comes out of this little solar panel right here. And again, 100 years ago, you're not going to do a whole lot with that except for maybe electroplate coins, because electroplating a coin, you just put them in a bath of acidic water and you let it sit there for a few hours or a few days or a few weeks, depending upon your power source. But eventually work will be done. I try to show you, but every time right now I go to pick him up, he's gonna run. I go to pick him up and he's running away. He's like, I don't want you to pick me up today. I don't want you to pick me up today. Right. And if I try to tell him to come up here and sit with me, he'll come up and sit with me, but then he'll start barking again. But I'll let him sit here with me. But then he jumps down and he turns around and he stares me in the face and he starts barking again. So here we go. And he's doing his little thing. All right. I'll tell you one I completely think is fabricated. I'll tell you why too. But let me kind of finish up with Tesla. I really think that they wanted Tesla to be squashed because I think he did want to demonstrate how there's so much ambient energy in the world we live in, so much ambient energy that we don't really need to have a generator generating it. We could just be pulling it out of the atmosphere. And as I was talking to you about the other day, I think in some cases we may have been pulling it out of the atmosphere, and just under the fabrication that we're generating it. Well, I have two or three beliefs currently. Number one, that what in the Hoover Dam, the Boulder, Colorado dam that backs up against Lake Mead, which right now is at a historically low, other than when we created the lake level, I think is the world's largest Lord Kelvin water drop generator. I have had the luxury of being into the generation, into the bowels of that structure. I have photos of it even, where I went on one of the what they call the hard hat tours, where they allowed you to walk around within the catacombs of the structure. And I didn't find any spot in the center where they had Optimus Prime, but and at the time, this was before I even really attacked the pyramids. Otherwise, I would have been much more observant of the configuration and structure, because one of the things I really like to point out is when somebody says, "Oh, it would have taken 20 years to build this," I say, why? It's hypothetically 88 million or 88,000 square feet, whatever the number is. It's 88 something square feet of cement. And then you look at the size of the Great Giza Pyramid, it's the exact same size, the 88,000 whatever. It's the same volume of mass. So I don't think it would have taken them 20 years to build. If it really took us from the time we broke ground to the time we completed it was 7 years, but it took us 1 year to make the diversion tunnels. I don't know if you ever watched a documentary how they made it. It's awesome structure. But they diverted the Colorado River around it, dried where the Colorado River was, built. They probably could have built it quicker, but they the pyramids, I think they probably built it quicker because I think they had a better technology than we did. But we still built the Hoover Dam in 7 years. It's really 6 years of the building of the dam, but like I said, it took them a year to divert the water and dry the ground and make ready the foundation. But they built that thing in 7 years. It's the same exact volume as the Great Giza Pyramid. So there's no reason they couldn't have built it in 7 years too. That's just one of the things. Like, why do it says 20 years? Because you're thinking they're building it with people pulling these rocks on horses. That's the mindset you have because of the stories. No matter how hard you want to fight me, believe that the majority of the structure was poured. Now, I do think some of the rocks in certain areas where they're strategic areas, some of those rocks may be organic, but the majority of the structure, with that 10% of the little bit on the inside, here we're looking at right there in the picture there, the only parts that have any rocks of any substance are the areas you see drawn. Everything else is just fill. It's just fill. And I don't think they built the thing like Lego blocks, because if you take a tour of the structure and you go in through what they like to call the thieves entrance, the part that was forged down at kind of ground level, and you come to the little Y section, that particular, what you're walking through is boulders. You're not walking through Lego blocks. You're not walking through Minecraft where everything is squared. That was just filled with boulders and dirt and stuff, and they pulled it out to make that thieves entrance. But right there is documentation that the whole thing is not made like Lego blocks. So when they say it was made with 2.3 million blocks, that is based on the volume and assuming it was made into blocks. The only blocks they need are around the outside and in strategic areas to hold things. Other than that, the rest of it can just be dirt and boulders and just dumping stuff in there, which takes no time at all. Just dump it in there, put some slurry, just keep dumping, fill it up. Come on, Bob, bring us another bring us another load. You know, it wouldn't have taken the same amount of time that what we made the Hoover Dam. We actually set the cement, and we kept having to move molds and stuff. Here they just had to make an outside structure, and as they're doing it, they're dumping stuff on the inside and working to build the thing on the inside. That's the only part that mattered. The configuration, the elevation, and everything else was just dirt. And you also know that because there's another documentary where somebody got permission to drill through the hallway, the Queen's hallway, which Queen's chamber I like to call the arc chamber, because that's where I believe there was a spark, an arc, like, you know, arc lighting before we had gas bulbs and stuff like, or gas lights. I'm trying to change the names of the rooms so that they fall into a line with my belief of how the system worked. And if somebody wants to give it a better name, I'm willing to give something a better name. But the Grand Gallery, I like to call the condensation chamber. The King's chamber, I like to call the combustion chamber. The Queen's chamber, I like to call the arc chamber. The subterranean chamber would actually be the cathode. When you look at the system, that's when you're working with things, that's a cathode area. And then cathode is the grotto. The anode is the subterranean chamber. Anode lets off the oxygen. Cathode lets off the hydrogen. Yeah, good. Now, certain things while they're on the screen that I could point out is you can see and you can feel if you run your finger across the bottom. I would love if somebody was in there. This is something people don't bother to take photos of or point out in documentaries because it matters nothing of the tomb theory. But there's a ridge that runs along that one conduit, a channel. And that tells me that when this particular conduit, when it's working, you're going to have different things being created, different densities, not just water, plain water, but different densities of water. Otherwise, why is there a channel there to direct something else through the system? So a compound, in addition to just normal hydrogen, oxygen, it could be deuterium, oxygen. It could be ammonia that's actually created. However, when I understand ammonia and water, they get violent together. However, there might be a particular pressure or temperature where they may work together without being so violent. These are things somebody who has worked with these chemicals would be better to answer, like, you know, how you're supposed to pour acid into water, not water into acid. So the acid, when it hits the water, gets diluted. If you pour water into acid, as soon as it hits, there's a reaction and it splashes on you and you could get burnt and stuff like that. You know, these are things that you learn in science class if they weren't teaching you about how you have white privileges and stuff like that. They used to teach in school anyway. And I think they're getting further and further away from it because the only people they want to know certain things is when you get into college and you are directed into your career. They're going to teach certain information to certain people. That way it leaves the majority of people in the dark. You know, you don't have a master of none, but knowledge of everything, but a mastery of nothing. They want you to have a mastery of one thing and a knowledge of nothing. You know, I could spend hours, and there's lots of stuff I could talk about. There's lots of pieces and parts that even some things that I still don't know and understand as of yet, but they're there, and they're pieces and parts that don't fit any tomb reasons, you know, but that doesn't mean they're not there. And somebody who, let me put it this way, on an airplane, they have little antennas sticking off the back of the wings. Have you seen them the last time you fly or watch any TV or you know, anything like that? Regardless, they have little antennas sticking off the back of the wing. Now you look at that, you'd have no idea why that's there, unless you understand when they do wind tunnels and when they fly airplanes, that just by putting those little wings there, it helps the air come back together, so it's less violence. Just that little tiny thing, and the little winglets they put at the end of the wings, they also help just a little, but every little bit saves in gas. Every little bit helps the aerodynamics of the airplane, the flying vessel, to slice its way through the air. And you wouldn't know why they're there if you didn't know what flight was. If you just walked up, an Aborigine walks up to an airplane, is going to see him, and he's not going to know what they're for, because he doesn't even know what the wing is. He just sees a chunk of aluminum sitting there in the middle of his field and says, like, damn, I have to move this. So yeah, okay. But just the airplanes, the aerodynamics. You don't understand what those pieces are for unless you understand the bigger picture, what they're doing, how the wind and turbulence is reacting. And this is where I hope to, when I eventually model this structure, some of the niches and marks and why something is how it is will come and answer itself, in function. The form will demonstrate itself in function. And it's, are you familiar with a guy named Victor Schauberger? Okay. His philosophy was observe nature and duplicate nature, where a lot of people try to observe nature and then recreate nature. And there's a nature, I think, the way a hummingbird works, the way a bumblebee works, these things have been perfected either by the God above, or if you want to believe Darwin, they're perfected by, the survival of the fittest. Either way, the solution that is there in front of you is the best solution. Even the dragonfly, hummingbird, bumblebee, all of them are flying creatures, and all of them are unique in their own way. And you look at them and you say, like, that bumblebee should not fly, but it does. Therefore, it's using a feature of nature, whether it's harmonics, whatever it is, they're using a feature of nature, and you should observe, understand, and duplicate or expand on. Where our philosophy is just manhandling. When we have our planes that take off, they're just taking a jet of air and throwing it down. They could do it in a less forceful, but same end result. That they don't, because they're of the mindset where they just go with brute force. This works, therefore we're going to jam it down. The other thing is, I was kind of talking to you about the ITER generator that they're building in France, and the Large Hadron Collider and all that stuff. They're using brute force to do something. We take these two things and we smash them together and hope that they stick. Where I think this particular structure says, if you take some hydrogen here and you take some oxygen there, in this particular scenario, they'll join together. And just let's let them just join together. Let's not let them smash together. Let's let nature do its work. Let nature do the work, and we'll just utilize the work that nature is doing. And that's one of the things that I feel this structure does, is nature's going to do what nature's going to do. There's going to be imperfections in nature, and this is designed to either capitalize on those imperfections and or eliminate them from the system, which is why there's certain channels that push certain things in certain directions. And that goes again back to the periodic table that we're taught in schools, that is a simple, I should have this, it's one of my images, but you know, you got your simple periodic table that you normally think of, and then you got your much more robust periodic table that kind of looks more like a cornucopia than a spreadsheet. I don't have one of those images right now, but I'll find one while we're talking. PERI. I think it in some cases the structure controlled itself. I was saying how, I can pull up the picture since we're right here. This particular, not that one, this opening, come on, I don't know what it's doing. It's taking its time right now. Come on, stop. It has grayed out my screen and it is not, it has taken over. All right, we're going to reset the screen. There we go. There we go. All right, so that particular opening right here, I'm going to start referring to that as a nozzle. This right here is where I feel there it goes, it's on the screen now, where the oxygen was coming, or the air. It was the air, nitrogen, oxygen, all that stuff. Just the ambient air was coming into the system and reacting with the hydrogen, I believe, burning together, and the end result was water. I've lost my train of thought. I have lost my train of thought. I lost my train of thought because they're climbing on my roof right now. Yeah, because I was thinking something. And I don't even remember what I was thinking. Then other than how they utilize, how they control itself. This particular thing right here, the water level by default is going to be just above this crack, just above that divider. When it goes higher, it's going to choke off the air supply. And as it goes lower, it's going to open up the air supply. So it is maintaining itself to where the reaction won't occur too fast and won't occur too slow. So it's controlling itself. And this is something that can easily be recreated to just demonstrate how it's just like the gas coming out of your stove when you light it. It's going at a constant flow. And there it's got one constant pressure. But if you did it in such a way where the gas would come in, and when you burn gas, it doesn't create there's the end result is not a liquid you can utilize. But here, the liquid that the end result, the water that is created when the two gases are burnt together, oxygen and hydrogen, that end result is what is utilized to control the reaction. As the water rises, it chokes the reaction off, slowing down the reaction. As the water recedes, it allows more air in, allowing the reaction to occur, and it's a self-maintaining. This is something that is, you don't have to fabricate it. It would just work, a self-maintaining system in this area. Also in the lower areas of the structure, it is also self-maintaining. When there's too much liquid, it spills down into what they like to call the well, which honestly, it's a perfect name for it. It's a well. That's about the only part of the structure that I think is properly named. I don't think there was any body controlling it. It was designed to maintain itself. The only control might be outside the structure, where they may have had some manipulation of what happens. Well, perfect question. Let's use the King's Chamber. If for some reason the fire went out, the spark went out, not enough gas was there, and it goes out. Not a big deal. Air comes into the room because the water level will recede a little, and plenty of air will come into the room. The gas, the hydrogen, I feel is coming from the area of the structure they call the grotto. I call it the catalyst room. And that will that's your constant flow. That's like the gas coming out of your pipe for your stove in your house if you use natural gas. That's going to be constant. So it's going to come into the room. Those two gases are going to come into the room. They're going to fill the room arbitrarily. It doesn't matter. The exact volume and mixture doesn't matter. And as I've suggested, I believe that that particular opening is constructed in such a way that if we knock the antenna off the top of the structure and we took all the electrical wiring out of that room and we just put a little camera in the corner and just sat there and did nothing, you're going to get static electricity build up in that room. And because of the way it's constructed and the abnormalities in it, you're going to get a spark, and that spark is going to be in the perfect spot where you want it, right at that opening where I had a better picture. In fact, I purposely got it. I was looking for it when we were talking the other day, and I went out and I got a better picture of now, where's the photos? My most recent photos. I purposely went out and got you a better picture when we were talking the other day. I was like, I want something better. And now I can't find it. Come on. That's not what I want. This is killing me. They were on the screen when I had it when we first came in. There we go. Right here. I took this off of in fact, I have right here the name of the video. It's on one of my playlists. This is a much better picture. This is a current day picture of the opening. Now you can see there's more damage in this picture, which was taken in the 2015-ish, than the picture that I just had on the screen, which I probably can't get to as easy as I want to, that was taken in 1990. Yes, that's what I was saying. The current day, they stuck a fan in there. Now it was right the pictures wanted before it wouldn't get there. Oh, you know why? Because that's going right to my Google page itself, and this is going to my shared link that I share with the world. So anyone can get to this dashboard. The other dashboard, you have to be logged in as me. That's why. But in this picture right here, which I'm working to get up on the screen, which I don't have the originals of, unfortunately, so I only have this low grade image. You can see right here there's no breakage. There's breakage here. You can see there's breakage here, but there's no breakage here. And I had, and I can probably find it again, where this was broken. And this picture was taken in 1978, it says. Okay? So this picture was 1978. This picture's 2015. There's more damage. Somebody did a buttload of damage in the past 2 decades, 3 decades, 4 decades, 4 decades. The past 4 decades, more damage has been done to this structure. And that's heartbreaking to me. But you can see the damage that has been done. And I almost think, if I had to guess, the same reason we put the antenna on the top of the structure to alleviate the static electric buildup within the structure, on the surface of the structure, I probably think on a good day, somebody could be standing there and might have walked over to that and may have been the path of least resistance, and there may have been a spark. It may still, nature could still do what nature still did, because nature's nature. It's going to keep doing what nature does. So if they damaged that particular, where it came to a focal point, where it came to a more of a point, you know, right there where there was like a little, you can't see it yet, right there where there was more of a point, that would have been where the static electricity would have jumped between the two sides, because just as static is in there, that's what static does. That's how phasers work. When you put the two pieces of aluminum foil just next to each other, one of them a little bit further than the other, and like a Jacob's ladder, how the electricity will go and work its way up there. This, I bet you, up at the top there is probably an inch or two closer together than it is down at the bottom. If I had a tape measure, I'd really like somebody to look at that, and it's probably an inch or two, maybe a centimeter or two. I don't care. It's some deviation where at the top it's going to be slightly closer together than it is at the bottom, and you're probably going to get a Jacob's ladder type scenario. But right there is going to be a spark right at what I like to call the nozzle, and that's where you want the spark, so that the gases in the room start combustion. As soon as you have the spark, you only need one spark, and then the rest nature takes off with. And if there's a spark and it doesn't happen to ignite because there's too much air and the hydrogen's on the other room, it'll spark again 10 minutes later, an hour later, a day later. It doesn't matter. Eventually, nature's going to spark. And when it sparks, the gases could start to ignite, and then as soon as they start to ignite, the system's back up and running. This also leads to the people, Chris Dunn and a couple of others, have said that the King's Chamber, they feel they have found evidence that there was explosions within that room, massive explosions. Something pushed the walls out a little bit because of how they're seated. They feel that the walls were out, and that would coincide with no. They put a fan in there to pull air into the system because it's hot and muggy with people walking through there. The gases, no hydrogen is being generated anymore. The system isn't running. There's no water in the basement. There's no other gases are coming into the system other than the ambient air. And it's going to be foul air on the inside because people are breathing and farting and have bad breath and have, BO. So you want air coming in to circulate out into the system. There's no other place in the system other than the entrance, which is down a couple hundred feet, to get air into the system. So that's done for tourism reasons. Nothing about preventing explosion. There's no gas to smell. There's no, other than flatulation and body odor and bad breath, there's no gases to smell. The system is not working. If you were walking through a locomotive engine and you were in, where the boiler room was, there's no water in there anymore. There's nothing. Yes, it's done to pull more air into the system so that you had ventilation of fresh air. And that's really why you could call the Giza Antiquities people, but I guarantee that fan was put in there just to get a flow of air into the system so that you had fresh air in there, so that people aren't feeling dizzy because there's no ventilation. That is the ventilation. That is the only ventilation for getting air into the system. Nothing to do with hiding anything, because the system has been working for thousands of years. There's nothing to hide at this point. But they put a fan in there. A decade ago, they didn't have a fan in there. That fan was probably put in there during their upgrades in the 2000s when they shut it down for a couple of years. They shut it down for like a year or two to do upgrades and repairs. Well, the upgrades and repairs are they patched over, put railings and put lights, and there's obviously you can see in the corner right there, there's a big bright light. They did light the place up. Otherwise, people would be after walking around with torches and flashlights. And there's electricity in there. There's probably radios and communication. Somebody say, hey, some lady fell up here. We need, somebody to come up here and help us out. Or, the guy in the green shirt keeps taking Polaroid pictures, and we, need to snag them because you're not supposed to have a camera in the structure, things of that nature. But I don't feel that that fan was put there in any way to hide something that isn't there anymore. There's yeah, you can, I guess you can look at it. But you can see that even in the past half a century, we still continue to do damage to this structure. So it's hard to get a grasp of. Right. Well, if on my webpage or tweet, I tweet very little, but one of the things I tweeted, that there's a saying that man fears time and time fears the pyramids. Okay, that's the saying. I didn't make it up. I expanded on it that man fears time, time fears the pyramids, but the pyramids fear man. And the reason I say the pyramids fear man is because man keeps destroying the pyramids. We keep modifying and manipulating them. And it's hard for me to say, if I walk up to a car and the engine's out of it, that this used to be a car. Now, if you know what a car looked like, you could look at it and say, okay, it's a car missing an engine. But if you didn't know what a car was and you walked up to it and says, it looks like a bunch of metal that you sat in and play with a steering wheel, you know, there's no engine. How could it be a car? There's no engine. But there's no engine because somebody took it out of it. Oh, you know, here, somebody at some point damaged this structure, more damage than was there half a century ago. And it's hard for you to visualize what used to be there when you have the blinders of a tomb. It's just another hurdle that has to be achieved. Which is why one of the things is, if I try to tell people a system, I'm building a system, I show them all the pieces of my system. Forget the pyramids, my system. Tell me, when I build my system, what will occur. Then maybe somebody could look at it, and especially if I say I'm building it this way because this is what I want to occur. I want there to be a spark there. There's already enough construction there from the older pictures that it is conceivably possible that in the right scenario, if that room was filled with static electricity, that you could get a spark out of that little thing, because you're going to get a spark somewhere. Nature's, you know, on a nice staticky day, sparks will happen. When you touch the doorknob, a spark will happen. It will happen. Now, what if you were in a room where your gas oven is turned on, and you got COVID, so you can't smell anything, and you walk across the room and you touch that doorknob and there's a spark? The gas is going to ignite with the oxygen in the room. There's going to be an explosion. End of story. That's just going to happen. Now, it may not happen the first time you touch it because maybe there's not enough gas in the room. But if you keep walking back and forth across the room and making that spark, eventually that spark is going to ignite the gas, combust with the ambient air that's already in the room, the oxygen that's in the air that's already in the room, and you're going to have an explosion. Now, natural gas and air doesn't really make a product. The product is, I don't even know what the product is. But if that was hydrogen and you touched it, your end product would be a damp room. Now, if you had a continuous flow of hydrogen and you had a continuous flow of air, you're going to get a pool of water. And that's just nature 101. I don't have to make any hocus pocus up out of that. That water, in this particular scenario, in this particular system, in this model, is at elevation. And then from there, water will run downhill. And all I'm saying is, when water runs downhill, and I didn't make the system, it's going to pool. The excess water is going to flow down into the system. And so my suggestion is, if I was to build this, and I'm telling you what I feel each part was for, but I want it built to the spec of what's there. So I don't want to fabricate parts. Every part that's there, I want incorporated into my model. Every part of the system that is there, I need to incorporate into my model, because the parts are there. I don't want to dismiss something that I don't understand because I don't understand it, because it's there for a reason. If there are winglets on the back of the wing, if there's a fin on the side of the wing, it's there for a reason. And I'm not here to second guess what it's for. I'd really like to duplicate it and observe what occurs. And sometimes I think it's rock. I mean, wood and organic things petrify. Rock, it's debatable what you would, how we classify things. I don't think rock would be considered organic, which is why you can't carbon date it. You can't carbon date rock. It's not organic. And even carbon dating is a whole nother can of worms. But I understand the theory behind it. You're looking at the decay of carbon. Normally, there's certain percentage of carbon-17 within the pool of carbon, but over time it decays and changes to other forms of carbon, and you're looking at the percentage of carbon, but you have to start that based on what the percentage was in the beginning. And since we really don't know at every step of history what the percentage of carbon was, it's a guess. It's a guess because you're starting with a moving target. So that's carbon dating is an interesting technology. Yeah, it has. Well, all right. Well, I would love to pick this up some other time, but I think that's great. I would love to do that. In fact, I would love people to ask questions, as long as any question, as long as it isn't backed with something from the tomb dogma theory, because I don't believe the tomb dogma theory. So, like, asking me, it would be the same thing as you ask me, like, during the process of evolution, what made the butterfly turn into a spider? You know, I dismiss that question because I don't believe in the theory of evolution. No history believes in the theory. We haven't found any missing links. You know, I think we are much more closer to the Bible story than the fictitious theory of evolution, which we already discussed. People have poo-pooed. Hands down, I think both Lloyd Pye and Kent Hovind have destroyed the story of the theory of evolution. I don't believe their end theories, but their evidence is sound, and that's what I'm focused on. And we're going to come back in a couple of weeks. Any questions anybody has, go ahead and send them to Karen. Why does it say Karen on there? It is Catherine. I don't know. Anyway, you are Karen. Well, the other day I said Karen. I thought you said it was Catherine. I'm not here to worry about it. I could have been drinking too much. I know that. But the other day I said Karen, and you said, no, it's Catherine. And I keep saying Karen because in things, a Karen is somebody who complains a lot on the internet and Twitter and right. Well, I'm not saying you do, but if somebody's a Karen, it's like, oh, we got a Karen out front. You know, it just means somebody who's. So the other day I thought I said Karen. He said, no, it's Catherine. So I said, okay, you know, but I said Catherine. Okay. That was my fault. Again, goodbye on Karen's behalf. She can't hear you right now. In post-production, she might say goodbye herself. But since the way that we had to do this with Facebook, you can't hear her. We will reconvene. Ask me questions. I'll be glad to answer them the best I can. Some things I don't know. I'll be honest with you. I don't know. I'm willing to find out. But there are pieces and parts that I don't understand why they are there. And if somebody's knows about water flow, pressures, things of that nature, maybe you can tell me, oh, you know, when water squirts out, it has this pressure, you want something to contain it, and that's why it's shaped like that. You know, I'm willing to listen. I'm willing to take into considerations, and I would like to understand and be able to tell somebody, oh, well, you know, it could be because this happens in this situation. Like, you look at that opening right there that I like to call the nozzle. That's the perfect thing for a nozzle. You have you know, just picture a fire at just above the water level, which would be, you know, right just, oh, can I draw a line? Right, I think water level would be right about there if you're in the back of it, right up here in the front of it, because you're looking down at this thing. If you can see my little marker there. And that would be the water level, and that would be where that is a spigot shooting out a flame of hydrogen, oxygen being burnt together, you know, water vapor. It comes out to be water vapor, which would be condensing in the room and coming down, and makes the whole system run. And if you follow that system, if you work with that particular mindset, follow the system, everything else falls into place, because that is the genesis of the water at the top of the system. And from there, the system really falls into a place as long as you don't think it's a tomb. You have a great day. Talk to you later. Giza.ws, greatgizapyramid.com.
Yes, as per Angel says, we will come back in the next couple of weeks and make another part of this. Poor Angel. They were washing the caravan. The dog was going, "What about me?" every now and again, and but that was a great chat yet again, and very much appreciate him spending that time with me again and making this video. It's just the way we record it. Like, I can go on my phone and on my computer and be on Hangouts, but we did do it on Facebook. But for some reason, I just can't get both of me on Facebook. I can be on there, but you won't hear me, because on my video recorder, I'm narration and he's computer, and I can do it one way or another. But it doesn't matter. We want to hear Angel, so it was all good for me. Also, sorry about the quality of this video. I don't know what it is, but Facebook does it to my phone as well. It just makes everything all blurry. If I make a video or anything on my phone, you'll see this like layer on the top. That's what's happening with this video here. It's just got this weird layer on it, so that's why he's all blurry. But when he's the little box down here on the right, he's not blurry. But when you open him up, but he understood, he saw himself blurry. But, you know, we're talking, so that's the way it is, I'm afraid. But anyway, I just wanted to add that. Sorry about the quality. It's Facebook for you. But anyway, thanks very much, Angel, and we will come back another day and have a bit more of a chat about those pyramids. Thank you very much.